Okay, so welcome everyone to this inaugural meeting of our free non-dual meditation group. I really appreciate everyone being here. And for those of you who haven't ever worked with me before, I'm Mira Funk, licensed clinical social worker. I'm a psychotherapist and psychedelic guide. And for today's meditation, we're going to do a little bit of relaxation, and then we're going to do some non dual practice, a particular exercise looking at the sense of what's underneath us and seeing if we can explore letting that fall away. And then I'll give just a really brief little talk about that, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. And my goal is to have us out of here by 4:50, well, it's Pacific time, 50-minute length. I'm used to the clinical hour as a psychotherapist. That's kind of what I go for. But I think it's also really convenient for people because it gives you a little transition window to your next activity. So that's what we'll do. So, so to start, I'd recommend getting in a comfortable posture for meditation. And you can do this, in a chair if you're in front of your computer. If you're in a chair, you might want to plant your feet on the floor so you kind of are anchored and stable. I would say the most important thing with meditation, I mean, there's so many different styles, so it's not like this is the most important thing, but the way that I do this is having attention be both calm and relaxed at the same time. And so the body posture is helpful for that. So go ahead and close your eyes. And I said calm and relaxed. I also wanted to say having a bright attention as well. And so posture wise, having your spine be on the straighter side, so sitting up straight, kind of helps brighten the attention. So there's a sharpness and a focus. And then relaxing your muscles really helps get into relaxation. The image for me of this is like a weeping willow tree, where you have the trunk, like your spine, that is straight and upright and alert. And then, just like a weeping willow tree, all the branches just kind of hang down loosely. All of your other muscles are just really, really relaxed. And to help with this, you can do a gentle scan of your body, starting with your feet and just noticing how they feel. And then, if you notice any kind of restlessness or tension, see what it's like to just let them relax. Let them be easeful and still. You can repeat the same process, gently moving your attention upward into your legs and just noticing how your legs feel. And again, if you notice any kind of restlessness or tension, see if you can find where it is and just allow it to soften and relax. And continuing to move your attention up into the core of your body. So just noticing your belly, your chest, upper and lower back, tuning in, and just seeing if you can invite more stillness and ease. And feeling that relaxation flowing down through your arms into your hands and fingertips. And also scanning your attention upward into your neck and your face. First, just noticing how everything feels. And then, if you can identify any kind of tension anywhere, seeing what it's like to just give it permission to relax. There may be tension in your jaw or tension in your forehead, or maybe in your eyes. Anywhere you find it, just letting it be easeful. And if there's anything that doesn't want to relax, that's also fine. We're not trying to force anything. It's just an invitation. And if there's some part of you that continues to feel tense or grippy, it's okay. You can just be with that and just notice it. And just sitting in stillness like this, like a weeping willow tree, upright and alert, but also relaxed. You may notice a kind of feeling can settle in your body. There's almost like a period where you want to fidget initially, and then as you just keep sitting still, your body stops wanting to fidget, and you can just kind of sink into this groove of stillness. It feels almost like being blissfully frozen in place or something. And if that's not happening, that's also okay. It's just something that might happen. It can be a helpful posture to settle into physically and mentally, into that kind of groove of stillness. And finally, bringing some attention to your breathing. Sometimes when we breathe, the breath is high up in the chest, and that can be a little bit more shallow, a little bit more tense, a little bit more anxious. And so if you invite your breath gently down into your belly, it's very helpful to soothe your nervous system. When you breathe in this way, it feels almost like your lungs are down in your stomach. It's like the breath comes down, you feel your diaphragm pulling down. So your belly actually inflates like a balloon on the in breath, and then deflating on the out breath. Nice, deep and slow. Your breath coming and going just like the ocean tides. Okay, good. And now we're going to gently shift gears into some inquiry, some ways of noticing exploring non-duality. And for today, I want you to focus your attention on whatever parts of your body are in contact with the floor or whatever surface you're on right now. So if you're sitting in a chair and your feet are on the floor, notice the bottoms of your feet. And if you're in some kind of meditation posture and you're contacting, the cushion or the floor, just notice all those contact points with your knees or your butt, just whatever's closest to the floor, in contact with the floor. Notice those points of contact. Using your attention almost like a microscope, kind of detailed curiosity, noticing whatever sensations might be there. This might be things like pressure, temperature, pain or dullness, textural feelings of fabric, tingles, whatever it is, just noticing what's happening where your body is in touch with the floor or as close as you can get there. And if you find your mind is wandering elsewhere or in thought, that's totally fine. Happens to everybody. Just gently redirecting attention back to wherever your body is touching the floor. Or whatever is on the floor, if you're on a cushion, if you got shoes on, whatever it is, just whatever's closest to the floor, those parts of your body, just noticing where you're feeling the pressure of gravity in particular, all the sensations that are at those points. Okay, good. And now what I want you to do is get curious about what's happening underneath those sensations. So, kind of directing the arrow of your attention now downward below those contact points. So, like below your feet or below your knees or below your butt or whatever is closest to the floor, those feelings of pressure in your body. Direct your attention downward. And the question here is, what can you feel beneath you that is a direct body sensation? And at first, you might notice your mind may start to conjure up images. So you might say, okay, what's underneath me? Well, I know it's there. There's the cushion or the floor or my shoes or whatever your situation is, whatever's under you. Your mind may come up with all the imagery. And if you keep going down, there's, the floor, the rest of the building you're in, the foundation of the building and the earth. And your mind may have a very confident sense of all these supports and structures that are underneath you, that are holding you up. It's kind of terra firma. But remember, my question was, what can you feel underneath you that's a direct sensation in your body? Not an image, not a memory, not a concept, a direct sensation in your body. And you might realize that you're not touching the rest of the building underneath you. You're not touching the foundation. You're not touching the earth unless you're outside. But even then, you're just touching the surface. So everything that feels like it's underneath you right now, the only way that exists for you in this moment, in your consciousness, in your experience, is as a kind of memory, a kind of image, a trace. And so the experiment here is to see what's it like to allow your mind to relax out of the effort, the work of holding up all of these stories and concepts of floor, of building, of foundation, of everything under you. And just coming closer into just the feelings in your body at those points of contact. One way to do this exercise that is helpful for a lot of people is you can do it in 2 steps. And the first step is you keep underneath you some floor, but just a thin little wafer. So if you're inside in a room and you're on the floor in some way, or you're on a chair on the floor, just imagine that there's a little square of floor under you, just enough to hold your chair and your feet or your body, whatever your posture is. But imagine it's very, very thin, just like a thin wafer. So you can still feel the floor. Okay, you're touching the floor, sure. But then again, ask the question, what's underneath that? What's below that thin wafer that I can feel directly in my nervous system as a sensation? And you might just find there's nothing there because you're not directly touching anything below that thin wafer of floor. So the only way that might show up for you is just as a memory, just as an image. And because it's just a memory or an image, you might have the possibility of just dropping it. Just kind of closing that tab, that browser tab of your mind that's just holding on to the image of all the floor underneath you. And just kind of letting that relax. or if that feels like it's not happening, you can leverage your imagination here to great effect. Because remember, all that stuff underneath you is just an image, right? You're not touching it all directly with your body. So that means that if it's an image, you could replace it with another image. And my suggestion would be just replace it with an image of space. So remember, we have this thin wafer of floor that you're on. Just imagine that everything below that is just space. Almost like a kind of magic carpet, just like floating in the air. And so you can feel those sensations, right, that we explored earlier. Maybe feelings of pressure on the bottoms of your feet or your knees or your butt, everything that's just contacting the floor. Got that thin wafer of floor underneath there. What's there? Maybe it's just nothing. Or maybe it's just space. Maybe it's just air. So you might have some kind of sense here of like the ground dropping out from under you. What was once held as something solid, recognized in this moment of consciousness for you as just a kind of dreamlike image that can just disappear or just be replaced with something else, like space, like air. And if you're not having any of those feelings, that's also okay. Whatever is happening for you is just what's happening. Or just exploring and seeing what comes up. And then the last step that we'll explore is what's it like if we also let go of the disc of floor? Because that's also kind of an image, right, that we're holding. It's sort of a visual. See if you can let that go or just replace it with space. And then things get even simpler. So you can feel those pressury sensations, the bottoms of your feet or your butt or your knees, whatever is touching the floor. You can feel those sensations. And that's what's directly happening for you in this moment in your body. And the whole floor story is just not there. Or maybe it's just space. And again, there may be some sensation of the ground dropping out or just a feeling of floating, almost like a levitation, uh, flotation tank kind of feeling. And in this way, we even let go of the story of gravity because the mind wants to take any experience and put a story to it. So there's a story of, well, there's pressure on my feet, on my knees, on my butt. There must be gravity. There must be a surface I'm on, pushing back up. Right now, we're just exploring the simplicity of your direct experience, just the sensations. So letting go of that story, there might just be these mysterious feelings of pressure on your body. Why are they there? Who knows? That's just what you're feeling right now. And the floor may just be dropping away. I'll give you some moments here in silence just to explore this feeling. Maybe you're having the sense of what I'm talking about and the sense of some kind of opening beneath you. Maybe not, that's okay. No expectations here, just tuning into what you're feeling and just noticing. Okay, good. So you can slowly start to open your eyes. And I'd like to invite you, as you are opening your eyes, just to notice in this moment of transition that it can feel sometimes when we do these meditations with some visualization that we are traveling somewhere, like elsewhere. Um, and yet we've been in consciousness the whole time, right? So, this particular property of consciousness that we've been exploring, of the solidity of things being constructs that you can let go of, it's still available here. And so you might notice, even sitting here with your eyes open, you're still not touching the foundation of the building you're in, right? So if we come into just the simplicity of direct sensory experience and allow the mind, with all of its stories and maps of the architecture of the building and stuff like that, to just relax, perhaps there's still some sense here of that floatiness, of just feeling the contact points and noticing there's nothing to be found underneath you. If you looked for it in your direct bodily experience, it's only there as a memory, as an image in this moment, right, for you. So just kind of tune into that. And this is how the meditation integrates. So it's not just a special experience you're having on the cushion, but it starts to become more alive in day-to-day life. Okay, great. So I'm going to just give a really brief talk about some of this stuff. And then I'm actually much more interested in having more time for questions. So I'm going to try to be really brief, and then I'll open up the floor. So yeah, this being our first meditation in this series, I thought probably be a good idea to just say a brief word about non-duality and what the heck that means, because it's honestly kind of a buzzword these days. People use it in all sorts of different ways. So what are we talking about? And I'll just say briefly how I use the word. Not that this is like the ultimate meaning or the correct meaning or anything like that. It's just sort of how I mean it, just so you know what I'm talking about for clarity. And I like to use the language of dreams and lucid dreaming to describe it. I find it's a helpful metaphor. I didn't come up with it. It comes from the Tibetan Buddhists. They were really good at that stuff. With lucid dreaming, dream yoga. But anyway, imagine right now that you are dreaming, right? So you're having a dream right now, and then you kind of wake up in the dream and you realize, oh, I'm dreaming. Some of you may have had this experience, actually. Some of you may not have. It's okay. You don't have to have previous experiences. Exercise. But if you, if you were having a lucid dream right now, oh, okay, I'm dreaming, you would be able to, in theory, right, look around everything, your body and the walls and furniture, whatever's around you, wherever you are. And you would have some insight. Oh, okay, everything looks really solid and separate, like all these different objects, like I'm an object, the tree is an object out the window, or the lamp is an object behind me, or whatever. But you would know, oh, but actually I'm dreaming, so it's actually all part of the same fabric of consciousness right now. Like this is all arising in the theater of the mind. And you would have that realization just as easily as like looking at a big mirror, right? Like in a restaurant or something, you look at a big mirror and you see all the shapes and colors, but your mind instantly knows it's all one image and it's just flat and it's just a mirror. So lucid dreaming is kind of like that. You can see that it's all consciousness. And the premise, you could say, of non-duality is, what's it like to recognize that that's happening all the time, even when we're wide awake? And this is how the Tibetans talk about it, that we're kind of always dreaming, in a sense, whether we're dreaming at night or whether we're awake. There's always the sense that our experience is arising in consciousness. And if you wanted to, you could bring in a little neuroscience. That's just my neuroscience geek side, which would say that our experience is this kind of prediction of what our brain thinks is there, right? So if I'm holding up my watch, even though it feels like, yeah, this is the actual cluster of atoms, the solid atoms that I'm contacting directly right now in my hand, feels very much like a solid object. Neuroscience would say, well, actually, the brain's getting in sensory data, and there's this kind of priors, as they call them, in our brain of like previous experiences, beliefs of what's there. And then the brain kind of flashes into consciousness this prediction of like, aha, a watch. But it is just that. It is a kind of representation or prediction. It's not the actual kind of atomic object. It's just different ways of describing it. The Tibetans, neuroscience. I'm not claiming any kind of ultimate knowledge or truth about any of these things, but these are just ways into non-duality conceptually. But the experience is really much more like that kind of lucid dream that I'm talking about, where the lights kind of come on and you have this realization of, oh, everything is consciousness. So everything that looks separate is actually kind of interwoven. Everything that feels like a stable, enduring object is something that's kind of flashing into presence and consciousness spontaneously and then perhaps disappearing. And everything just is kind of being created on the fly in this kind of fluid, almost like virtual reality kind of feeling way. And it can feel very fluid and dreamlike. And so to me, that is non-duality, not as a philosophy, as a concept, as an experience. It is directly tasting that in your senses. So visually, so everything visually looks that way, everything, auditorily with sound and tactily. And so just and briefly, what we were doing today was just exploring that in the kind of somatic sensory way, right? Because the dualistic default frame when you're just sitting somewhere, just sitting in a chair, is your mind is in that default mode of duality and assuming, oh yeah, there's like these objects underneath me and there's the floor underneath me. And that may all be true in like a physics sense. Who knows? I don't make any ultimate claims about the nature of reality. But what I'm pointing to is if you just investigate just your direct experience and just kind of letting go of the concepts. Those are where psychedelics also help with this stuff. When the concepts drop, just coming into the moment by moment sensory experience, getting sort of simpler and simpler. It's like, okay, well, what's actually there? There's the pressure on my butt, right? And then like underneath that, I don't feel anything. There's just like, my mind wants to make chair, my mind wants to make floor. Those are just memories. Those are just traces. But like what's there in a more immediate sensory experience, just, pressure, tingles, warmth, coolness on my skin. And so noticing that, the floor can kind of just melt away or drop away. And this is just one little doorway into that. But you can open this up, all around you, right? It's like, what's above my head? Your mind makes the ceiling, but is my head pressed against the ceiling? I don't think so. So that can also just kind of fall away. And so, little by little as you do this practice, there can be just a sense of all this extra stuff that your mind is just carrying as it's constantly structuring space and time and the environment and the furniture. And, it's like our survival mind is just trying to constantly situate ourselves. A lot of that can just really, really relax. And so there's much more of just a sense of spacious presence and lightness and spontaneity. Almost a simplicity of like, this is just what's appearing right now, just in a sensory way. It's actually in a way very superficial. There's not a lot of depth because a lot of that depth is just like our mind layering on all these concepts and stories. And so when that's falling away, there's much more of just a sense of these are the sensations presencing in this moment. Okay, I'm going to pause it there and let me rearrange some things Zoom-wise to facilitate the conversation. So I'm going to remove the spotlight on me. And so for this Q&A portion, you have two options. You can either put something in the chat if you don't want to show up on camera, which I totally understand. Or if you are willing to show up on camera, which I would appreciate, then feel free to just use the hand raise function. It should appear on your toolbar. There's a little hand icon, raise hand. And if you just press that, then I'll know that you want to have a question and I'll call on you.
I have a question.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Nicole, you raised your hand, but let's see. I guess, okay. Jen, why don't you go first and then Nicole, you can go after this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you mentioned dreams and dreaming. And I'm curious and I brought this up before in the chat, if you've heard of embodied imagination, which is a technique of going back into the dream and exploring the dream body and the dream and going back into the images. And just if there's a way to kind of understand that from a non-dual perspective. So feel free to, if you don't want to answer that, it's fine. I'm just curious if you've explored dream work.
I have explored dream work. Yeah, great question. I haven't heard of that particular technique of embodied imagination. But dream work is really powerful and occurs in a lot of different traditions. Not only, of course, the Tibetan, as I mentioned, but we have a pretty robust Western history of lucid dreaming with Stephen Berger, and also even when I used to work in the VA, we would do re-scripting with veterans with traumatic dreams, which is I think perhaps a little closer to what you're talking about, because there's a sense of, okay, I'm having this recurring nightmare, but let me bring it back up again, but re-script it. So imagine a different kind of story. So I think dream work is really, really powerful. It's definitely a time-honored way of working with the mind. And I wouldn't say I'm an avid lucid dreamer, but it's something I dabble in, and it happens every once in a while. Actually, I had one last night. This is kind of interesting timing. I was in a airport, and there were two of my friends there, and as we were chatting, it suddenly dawned on me of oh, these are characters in my dream. And I started talking to them about about how they were characters in my dream, which I find always surprises the characters when I start saying that. They're kind of seem caught off guard. So that's
apparently you're not supposed to tell them, or they don't want you to know.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
I've heard this.
It's interesting. Yeah,
it's like a forbidden thing.
Yeah, but But yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is sort of returning to dream content,
Yeah, in
therapeutically
waking,
and waking life.
like
Yeah,
in a
and I think
hypnagogic space. Yeah.
yeah, and there's definitely, I think, a lot of value to that. And it seems like, yeah, changing the way we relate to the dreams in that conscious state can alter the dream content, and then there's sort of a positive feedback loop there. Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Jen. And Nicole, you had a question, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's not so much a question really,
Uh-huh.
but it was during the meditation, what came up for me was that like there is no spoon. So just kind of like the matrix as far as like, yeah, there's no spoon. So just keep going with it. And yeah, it was really quite wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, The Matrix definitely had a huge influence on me when I saw it in eighth grade or whatever. Yeah, there's no spoon. Yep. Yeah. And actually, I'm glad that you chimed in with a report about the meditation, because I forgot to mention, not only can you ask questions, but also, yeah, if you had something come up during the meditation, even if it's just a sharing, it doesn't have to be a question. Feel free to chime in and let us know.
Greetings, Mira. This is Jacqueline. I just wanted to say thank you for leading this meditation. It was a good break in my day. But and when it comes to meditation, I appreciated the language that you guided us for our bodies to be relaxed, but like bright attention. I
Mhm.
was like, gosh, that was such a good word, bright attention, because it just, I don't know, it did what it's supposed to do. The word did what it was supposed to do when it comes to directing the body, because I find myself sometimes in meditation that it'll be easy to go to sleep, and I don't want to go to sleep. I want to stay in that space. um to me, it's very similar to the space and the energy or that one would need to be in to be a part of hypnotherapy or hypnosis.
Mm.
That the awake but not awake in between. But the question is that what is that space called between sleep and not sleep, or where we want to be in this meditation? I know you said lucid dreaming, but I don't know. Well, is it lucid dreaming? Just so I'm aware, I'm thinking about it correctly.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I can relate to your experience. I used to get really sleepy in meditation for a really long time, especially on long retreats. So just be like nodding off again, and it's hard. It's hard. I think when we are really keyed up a lot of times, and especially in this culture and just the pace of life, it's like our nervous system is really stressed. And so sometimes when we just give ourselves a moment to be still, the body's just like, okay, time to just shut down and just like, just. And so meditation can be very kind of muddy and sludgy in that way. And yeah, I find that there is something about the relaxation, but also it's sort of, and this is actually a classical metaphor. It's sort of like a guitar string where you don't want it to be like too loose, because then it's like wah, wah, wah. But if it's too tight, it's like and it's you're too amped up. So there's some kind of attunement there, and it does feel like it's some coming together of the relaxation and the brightness or the focus. And yeah, as I mentioned, what's always popped into my head is a weeping willow tree. Whenever I see weeping willow tree, I'm like, yeah, that's like meditation, because it's like you got the trunk, and the upright posture keeps you alert, and that's very important. If you're just like slumping over on the couch, like it's just a non-starter. You're just going to fall asleep, right? So the posture does matter, but yeah, then you kind of relax all your peripheral muscles that aren't holding up your spine, and then that really helps with that. And so you can cultivate those two at the same time. In terms of what that exactly is called, I feel like there's not a particular word that's coming to mind. Maybe somebody who's steeped in, I don't know, ancient like Pali terms for meditation could bust out some specific term for that. I think if you were to, I'm more of like a neuroscience geek person, and I think that there's probably something happening there. If we all had like EEG rigs measuring our brain, where like our alpha waves are probably a little bit higher. When the mind is like very, very agitated, it tends to be more in like beta waves. So if you're like thinking a lot, very agitated, and then if you're getting like really, really sleepy, as far as I remember, that's usually getting into like theta or maybe like delta waves, where you're like really kind of like nodding off. So, but the alpha waves seem to be some kind of nice middle ground where there's this kind of calm alertness. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what to call that state, but it's probably some kind of boost in alpha activity, alpha band activity, I guess, to get technical about it. Yeah.
I hear the word liminal space is coming to mind. Like,
yeah. Well, that's also interesting too, because because you have the liminal states of like the hypnagogic, which I think Jen mentioned, which is kind of like falling into sleep, and then there's the hypnopompic coming out of sleep. And I wouldn't say what we're doing here is exactly that, but there is some kind of coming together of something that feels dreamlike. And I think lucid dreaming to me is there is some kind of sense of I'm dreaming, but you're actually I keep talking about the brain, that's just my obsession, is when they measure lucid dreamers, your default mode network is actually like more activated. So you're in some kind of state of sleep, but also your brain is more awake at the same time. And it feels like something like that is happening when we're on DMT. There's some intersection there, but with non-duality, yeah, there's some sense of certainly you're awake, you're alert, you're conscious, but you're perceiving the dreamlike nature of everything. And so, yeah, you could call that a kind of liminality, I would say. In Buddhism, they talk about form and emptiness. There's something coming together there. So I want to be mindful of our time boundary. Peter, I see you have one question. Maybe this will be our last question. I apologize if I go a little bit over, and it's our first time, so bear with me. And then, I think Peter, you'll have the last question. Then we'll close out for today. Thank you, Jacqueline. That was a great question. Okay, Peter, you have the floor.
In non-duality circles, they always talk about doing and not doing. And if you're actively doing something, or seeking is another word for that, you're not there. And how do you feel about meditation? As it always appears as a doing to me. So how do you treat that space as not a doing?
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. My take would be there's always some sense of doing, I would say. And this is just my own personal take. Not everyone's going to agree with this, but I think that sometimes in non-duality, there can be exaggerated language that people use to talk about their experiences. And you will hear some people say, like, I have no sense of self, no sense of agency, no sense of doership whatsoever. Everything just happens to me spontaneously. I'm personally a little skeptical of those claims because they sound actually much more like neurological pathologies. I mean, there are actually conditions, for example, called alien hand syndrome, which can happen if you're a split brain patient, where your hand will actually move spontaneously, and one hand might be slapping you in the face while the other is like unbuttoning your shirt, and you just can't. It's a horrendous condition to have. And that would be a condition where you literally have no sense of agency, right? Your hands are acting and you just have zero sense of control over them. And I don't think when people say, no doership, they're talking about that kind of pathology. I think it's kind of exaggerated language. I think what they're referring to is that there can be a sense of relaxation. So it's along kind of like a sliding scale. A lot of times when we're going through our life, there's like a very rigid, I would say, sense of like, I'm controlling my experience or my body, like from this kind of control tower of the head. And there's a sense of, just the sense of will being like very kind of iron and very rigidified and stuff like that. And a sense of doing and striving that's very like active. So for example,
I've heard teachers say that meditation is not a helpful or a useful thing for most people, because it means they're trying to change what is. They're trying to change something actively. They're not letting what is be.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of schools of thought on that. So you have the kind of, radical non-duality people or neo-Advaita people who would say, like, don't meditate because just the very act of meditation itself is already kind of striving. And I see where they're coming from. My personal take is that, and this is kind of getting to what you were asking earlier, is that there is different ways of meditating that are practicing doing, and other ways of meditating that are practicing not doing, right? So if you are sitting in meditation and you have some highly rigid program where you're like, I'm going to do this, body scan meditation or something like that, and it's like very systematic, and you're going through and you're trying to have certain outcomes, and there's a sense of like controlling the attention from your head and stuff like that, and you're cycling through that over and over again. Yeah, that's going to be a sense of doing and effort, or you're striving after a certain state of mind. Now, there's another genre of meditation that's much more kind of open awareness, or non-dual, or Mahamudra, Dzogchen. This again comes from Tibetan traditions, and sometimes they call that like Gomme is a term in Tibetan, which translates as like non-meditation. And so to me, that's actually practicing meditation that's much more about, like do nothing, right? So this is another genre. And you can see that in Zen. They call it shikantaza, just sitting meditation. And so in that sense, it's not about, I have a particular task or a goal, but it's more like I'm sitting here and I'm just noticing when my mind comes up with a task or a goal or a problem, and then I'm just allowing it to relax. This is a classic kind of debate that goes back centuries about, how do you meditate, and, should you do or not do? I like to sort of use all the tools in the toolbox, and I feel like, it is possible to have more of a flow state in life where you feel like there's less of that sense of rigidified anxiety about control, and things feel a little more spontaneous, where, you can go take a walk and it feels a little bit more like my feet are kind of walking themselves, not like alien hand syndrome, which can be very unnerving, but it's just more like something is just loosening up, where it's just like there's a sense of the senses are happening more spontaneously, and there's less of that control tower kind of feeling happening. In meditation, you can cultivate that. The meditation we did today, definitely, it was structured. It had some, you were doing some things, but it's sort of part of what can I say, a slope towards non-doing, right? Because you start off kind of with this highly structured experience, and then we're doing this a little bit of doing, like almost like a little lever of like, okay, can we like drop the floor, right? And then when you drop the floor, there's a little bit more relaxation. And if we had another hour, we could drop the ceiling or like the walls, and then this is what we can do over the next, several weeks, is like getting to a point where, you're just kind of floating, and then there's a deeper effortlessness. So I think it's, I think it's too simple to make it like this black and white thing where it's like you should meditate or you shouldn't meditate, or all meditation is striving, or it's just about how are you meditating and what's the kind of longitudinal arc of that, and over time, over months and years, is your meditation getting into more and more just dropping into effortlessness that's also integrating into your life, so that there's more of a sense of effortlessness in your life? Or is it you're sitting on the cushion trying to eke out certain outcomes and going through certain programs that make your mind actually kind of like tighter and more, anxious or avoidant, Yeah. So, okay. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to just say some closing words and then we'll end for today. Okay. So, thank you everybody for being here. Really appreciate, your presence, and just supporting this little experiment that I'm starting off today. And I just want to say, if you have any interest in going deeper with me and doing any kind of one-on-one work or small group work, you can feel free to visit my website. That's unjourneying.com. And I'm also trying to take ads off of this channel, because I'm going to put this up on YouTube, and I really don't want ads interrupting a meditation. That's just so annoying. But you have to get your YouTube channel to a certain level. It has to get over 1,000 subscribers before YouTube lets you do that. So if you are enjoying this and you want to help me get the ads off here, if you could subscribe, that would really, really help. And yeah, I guess the last thing I'll mention is if you have any interest in sort of more like ongoing community around this kind of stuff, I'll certainly be doing these each week going forward. But I also have recently launched like a community on Patreon. And so, yeah, it's a pretty, you can look on my site, it's like unjourneying.com/Patreon. And you'll see different levels. Right now, the lowest level is just $5 a month, so it's a pretty accessible tier. But the goal is to create a community, right? And this is going through Signal, so we have like a chat group where we can talk more about meditation and just I don't know, find like-minded people to connect and communicate about this sort of stuff. So anyway, if you have any interest in any of that, feel free to check that out. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope it was helpful for you. And I'll see you hopefully next week. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.